Okay, we're continuing with the quote book, Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes by M.P. Rogers, alphabetical order. We're on Robert Pirsig. He lived from 1928 to 2017. He became most famous for his book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. He did write a couple of other books. What I admired most about him was his determination to complete this book. He would wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, this is before going to his regular job, and crank out some work on the book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And that type of dedication is impressive. It's a way to do something great despite working full time. He had a very high IQ, but in his youth he went through some emotional problems, mental problems, was hospitalized, and he recovered. He was diagnosed as a schizophrenic and almost lobotomized, but he made a great recovery. And this gave him the experience of being an outsider, this perspective, which combined with his great mind, made him a very good writer, insightful, able to see things in a more objective way. And so here's some of his quotes. The truth knocks on the door and you say, "Go away, I'm looking for the truth." And it goes away puzzling. If you don't generalize, you don't philosophize. And that's true. You have to generalize. You have to make judgments. You have to stereotype. You have to discriminate. How else do you get through the day? How can you make any decision without doing those things, okay? All right, he continues. Making an art out of your technological life is the way to solve the problem of technology. Art is anything you can do well, anything you can do with quality. And so that's a good quote too. Basically most of us have to work in some job, which quite often is tedious because we need the money, okay? And the way you can make it more endurable is keep on trying to learn a little bit each day. Keep on trying to do things a little better. Keep on trying to improve a little bit in some way each day. And that sort of ennobles your soul, okay? Because as long as you're improving a little bit, you feel good about that because you're never going to stay the same. You're always going to get a little better or get a little worse. So you put that effort in to get a little better each day. When a good case comes along, if you work in medicine, you look it up. You discuss it with one of your buddies so you make sure you understand it in a deep way. You teach it to a resident or something. So you're always doing something useful despite all the busy work and tedium. Okay, because if you don't, you become mediocre. You become what's called a gomer. Get out of my emergency room is what it means in medicine, but what it really means between the lines is you allow yourself to drift into mediocrity. Somebody who can get by, but somebody who doesn't do work of quality. Okay, he says we can't define quality, but we know what it is. We have artists with no scientific knowledge and scientists with no artistic knowledge, and both with no spiritual sense of gravity at all. And the result is not just bad, it is ghastly. And that's what I'm saying too. People ask me, why do I talk about Christianity? Why do I bring up religion? Why do I show paintings in my video? And I say, because it is this sense of it all going together that makes it great and good. The greatest scientists, the greatest composers, the greatest architects, most of the greatest people who ever lived, they were devoutly religious. Okay, if you study history, that's obvious. Isaac Newton, every discovery is an answer to prayer. Johann Sebastian Bach, every composition is to the glory of God. Michelangelo, I put all my faith, my hope, my trust, my effort in order to please God. Okay, that's been that way since the beginning. So what I'm trying to say is, why wouldn't I want to be that? I want to be a creative writer, a creative thinker, a great doctor. Why wouldn't I want the Christian tradition behind me? It's the greatest tradition. It's quite superior to all the others by far. Why wouldn't I want that? Okay, and I noticed also all these atheists, they suck. Almost all of them, they sell out. Okay. You think I'm kidding? Start looking up all the sellouts and you will see most of them don't believe in God, they don't have religion. Because if you believe in God and you believe I'm obligated to do what is right, someday I'll go before judgment, then you want to do the right thing. You want to tell the truth. But if you say to yourself, it's all bullshit, I might as well just make a little money for myself, then why would you tell the truth? And that's why all our institutions are going to crap, is because they've gotten rid of religion. Harvard used to be a great place. Now it's, the land of sellouts and mediocrity, diversity, affirmative action, DEI, and all these lies, selling body parts, lying on all their research studies. It's become a disgrace, an embarrassment, okay? That's what you get when you have atheism. You can't have good science with atheism. You might get an individual here or there who claims to be an atheist who does good science, but the field as a whole goes all to crap because you need a moral foundation in order to not sell out. Look at the nutrition world, all the high-fat phonies. They've all sold out because that's where the money is, okay? Why have I not sold out? Because I believe in God, okay? And I think I'm obligated to tell the truth. And somebody's got to try to keep the truth alive, like the Irish monks kept alive the literature of the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans. I'll keep alive the literature of the ancient Kempners, the ancient McDougalls and Burkitts and Pritickins. Okay, because somebody's got to do it, and the Gregory Sloops and the other great doctors of the past, the Huggins and the... All right, so anyways, let us continue. He says, it is not the nice guy who brings about real social change. Nice guys look nice because they're conforming. It is the bad guys, the ones who look nice 100 years later. They're the real dynamic force in social evolution. Right. So if you do what's right and you tell the truth and you don't go along with all the BS of modernism like castrating children in grade school and giving it a euphemism, gender affirming, BS, it's castration. If you don't go along with the BS, then you seem like a harsh person. But it's doing what's right. Like Augustine has said, right is right even if no one is doing it. Wrong is wrong even if everyone's doing it, What did the people say in the 1930s? They said, oh, we were just following orders. Well, they're doing the same thing today, okay, and it's wrong. Okay, next from Robert Pirsig. He says, I really don't mind dying because I figure I haven't wasted this life. Up until my first book, people said I had all this potential, but I screwed up. After it, I could say, no, I didn't screw up, okay? All right, now he's going to talk from Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. He says, if you're going to repair a motorcycle, an adequate supply of gumption is the first and most important tool. If you haven't got that, you might as well gather up all your other tools and put them away because they won't do you any good. Gumption is the psychic gasoline that keeps the whole thing going. If you haven't got it, there's no way the motorcycle can possibly be fixed. But if you've got it and you know how to keep it, then there's absolutely no way in this whole world that motorcycle can keep from getting fixed. Okay, he says, the teacher identified with the students in the back of the room who were frustrated with the material because they didn't understand it. The teacher was frustrated with the material because he did understand it. The best students are always flunking. Every good teacher notices that. Schools teach you to imitate, and if you don't imitate what the teacher wants, you get a bad grade. Taking the essence of the instruction as the teacher provided it and going ahead with it on your own, that got you A's. Originality could get you anything from an A to an F. Civilization or the system or the society or whatever you want to call it is best served not by mules but by free men. You want to know how to paint a perfect painting? It's easy. Just make yourself perfect and then paint naturally. That's the way all the experts do it. Actually, the way the Renaissance artists learned to paint was they apprenticed themselves to a master and they copied the methods of the master. Then they copied the masterpieces, and once they were able to reproduce them, they went around and did the paintings on their own. But even then, they had an advisor. They had some type of scholar. Like, Raphael didn't figure out how to paint the School of Athens all by himself. He had the great scholars that were funded by the Medicis to advise him, like Marsilio Ficino and Pico della Mirandola. They helped them to make the composition, to put it all together. Because when you look over the history of painting, and believe me, I spent countless days doing that, hundreds of thousands of paintings I've looked at. What makes a painting great, you need artistic skill, but beyond that, you need artistic judgment, and you need knowledge to compose something meaningful, to tell a story that people want to hear, that will stand the test of time. And it's that combination that leads to greatness. One without the other, and you can be good, but you can't be great. Okay, Robert Pirsig continues. So he would come back, because a lot of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance were his thoughts on education, his experience when he was in college, and looking back on it, and his experience as a teacher. So he liked this idea of a free man studying things because he wanted to. He said, so he would come back to our gradeless and degreeless school, but with a difference. He'd no longer be a grade-motivated person. He would be a knowledge-motivated person. He would need no external pushing to learn. His push would come from inside. He'd be a free man. He'd be there to learn something. And in the process of intellectual maturing that these abstract studies gave him, he would likely branch into other theoretical areas. Yep, that's how intellect is developed. Yes, it is hard, but it's not hard if you have the right attitude. Having the right attitude is the hard part. Boredom always precedes a period of great creativity. Yeah, and that's what I said about tutoring students is, the most important thing is get your psychology correct. Why do you want to learn? Like I wanted to learn biochemistry because it was a language of God that he uses to write the book of life, and I wanted to be a great scientist or great doctor. And people say, well, why do you bother with all that? Because you have to get this psychic energy. And if you think that way, you're energized to study it. Okay? But if you just think, well, I hope I get a good grade, that's not as energizing. You remember stuff better when you think it's important. So if you make it important, you'll remember it better. Okay, let's continue now with Robert Pirsig quotes. He says, one of the most moral acts is to create space in which life can move forward. Yeah, the reality of life is that most people don't care about you. They're indifferent to you, which is, some people are hostile to you, but, 99.9% are indifferent to you. And you just need to get out of the way, and that includes a past love, okay? If she said goodbye, that's goodbye, and life goes on. There's other fish in the sea, and the right thing to do is just stay away. Okay, Socrates is not using dialectic to understand rhetoric. He's using it to destroy it, or at least to bring it into disrepute. And so his questions are not real questions at all. They are just word traps, which Gorgias and his fellow rhetoricians fall into. Yeah, so a little bit of what he's getting at is Plato, using Socrates as his mouthpiece to some extent, and, the dialectics of the Republic and whatnot, would criticize and sort of embarrass the sophists. But, many of the people in ancient Greek in those days, they perceived Socrates as another one of these sophists, so to speak, as did Aristophanes in his play of the Clouds, okay? So he really sort of accuses them of doing what he's doing himself, okay? So Robert Pirsig continues, Phaedrus would have asked, what evidence do we have that the dialectical question and answer method of arriving at truth comes before anything else? We have none whatsoever. And if the statement is isolated and itself subject to scrutiny, it becomes patently ridiculous. Here is this dialectic, like Newton's law of gravity, just sitting by itself in the middle of nowhere, giving birth to the universe. Hey, it's asinine. Dialectic, which is the parent of logic, came itself from rhetoric. Rhetoric is in turn the child of the myths and the poetry of ancient Greece. That is so historically, and that is so by any application of common sense. The poetry and myths are the response of a prehistoric people to the universe around them, made on the basis of quality. It is quality, not dialectic, which is the generator of everything we know. Okay, so that's Robert Pirsig from the Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I hope you found that helpful.